Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of our series, Jobs to be Done Untangled. My name is Jim Callback. I'm the author of the Jobs to be Done playbook, and I'll be your co-host today along with Elaine.
And I muted. Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. And we're the purveyors of the Jobs to be Done toolkit. You can go to jobstobeDoneToolkit.com and learn some more there. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the toolkit later on in the show, but we want to get to some of your questions. But you can use the hashtag JTBD toolkit as well, too, along with your other favorite JTBD hashtags. So let's get into it. I just wanted to do a quick poll before we get into the agenda. So everybody, please find the chat function in the Zoom webinar here. And we just wanted to see what your general experience with Jobs to be Done is. We got a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 would be less experienced and 5 would be more experienced there. So I'm going to open up the chat and everybody say hello and just give us a number in the chat there. 4. Nice. Oh, so, okay. This is good. All right. Elvin, I'd give yourself a 4, Wolfram. Don't be on the fence there. Hello. 2.5, 1. There you go. Okay, great. We're going to take some questions later on in the session here. So be thinking, what's your biggest question? If you had to ask me and the group here, your toughest question. What's the one thing that sticks out in your mind when you'd say, I'd like to know about X when it comes to jobs to be done? Start thinking about that, and we're gonna collect some questions at the end. We already got some in, so we got a nice starting point. But start thinking about that right now. What do you guys want to talk about? Real simple agenda. We only have a half an hour, so we got 27 minutes left. I'm going to give a quick tip on Jobs to be Done. Talk a little bit. Got just a little blurb about the toolkit. Just want to show you some updates that we have there, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So that's pretty much it. Basically, 5 or 10 minutes for each one of these sections, leaving most of the time for the Q&A there. So here's my tip for today. When formulating a job statement, one of the test questions that you can ask yourself is this how they might have done it 50 years ago? There's a couple things that'll happen when you ask yourself that question. And you can think about this for formulating the main job or even a job step. You can ask yourself this question. And by asking that, it's going to help you do 2 things. One is expunge any technology or means, right? When we talk about jobs to be done, it's not about the means, it's about the outcome. And we want to get rid of the means, the technology, the solution, the product. We want to get that out of our language. And if you say something, if you want to make a job step, something like send email, right? And then you ask yourself this question, is this how they might have done it 50 years ago? You're like, well, no. They would have sent a communication or sent a message, right? So by asking this question, it helps you kind of expunge the means and the technology out of it. But I think it also helps future-proof your jobs to be done language, right? Because being able to answer this question also kind of gets to the core objective, right? I define a job as an objective. It's the aim. It's the thing that somebody wants to get done. So you can kind of think of a bow and arrow. They're standing on their spot, and the target is over there. It's what is that thing they're trying to get done? And it can be very functional and practical as well too. But what's the objective? And this helps future-proof your thinking around how you're going to formulate that. Again, this applies to the main job or even a job step. Because one of the advantages of jobs to be done, and I know a lot of you have probably seen this little bit here, this slide, quote unquote slide from me before. But one of the benefits of jobs to be done, and not talking about technology, is that your model, your research that you do with jobs to be done is going to be stable over time. And by that, I mean, when you do foundational research and you create a job map and job stories, and then you revisit them 6 months later or a year later or 2 years later, or sometimes even 5 years later, you come back. And if you had future-proofed your thinking, and by asking that question, how would they have done this 50 years ago, you're also future-proofing your thinking as well too, because chances are in 5 years it's going to be the same answer, right? That, guess what? Send a message, right? So 50 years ago, sending a message might have meant a letter in the snail mail, or what do they call those machines where you telex or something like that. 20 years ago it might have been a fax machine, or probably even more than that now. How old are fax machines? Email's pretty old. 30 or 40 years ago it was a fax machine, then it was email, and in the future maybe we have another way of sending a message, right? But it's send the message is still going to apply, right? So that's just a little tip to ask yourself. How might people have gotten this done 50 years ago? And that's a little test question that you can carry with you, right? Sometimes though, sometimes the answer doesn't apply because that thing didn't exist 50 years ago, or the job didn't exist 50 years ago. For instance, I was talking with someone about SEO search engine optimization, right? Talking about jobs related to search engine optimization. You could talk about SEO without mentioning technology, but it's going to be so abstract that it might not even be relevant. It's going to say, it's going to be all about relevance and things like that. So there are situations where you might want to allow yourself to use something that's not 50 years old or even older, right? In this case, I'm looking at a phonograph that's 150 years old. You might want to allow something that's a little more modern if the field didn't even exist back then as well too. But for the most part, that I find that little tip, how would they have done this 50 years ago? It's a nice little test question. That's my tip. I'm going to move on, Elaine, to a little bit about the Jobs to Be Done toolkit. And I see the questions coming in. Thanks for that, Kelvin. And I'm going to come back to you, Wolfram, about your +1. I want to know what you're +1ing there, but we'll do that in the Q&A. Just want to talk about the Jobs to Be Done toolkit. We launched this, a month ago? 2 months ago, Elaine?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there, yeah. 6 weeks ago, let's call it, right?
There you go.
And the idea here was to extend and complement, in particular, my book, which we're including as a resource, even though we don't produce. I mean, I already produced it, but my publisher is the one that produces that. We're including that as a resource, and we hope to get even more resources as a component of the library, of the toolkit. But the toolkit is really about online learning, and then these live workshops as well too. And the way that the three of those kind of work together is that I see the Jobs to Be Done playbook as kind of the broad spectrum of everything that can be done in Jobs to Be Done. It's actually not everything. It's my selection of top Jobs to Be Done plays and where you can learn more about them. The online learning is really about taking a deep dive into the core concepts around Jobs to Be Done, the elements of Jobs to Be Done, job mapping, and I talk about a lot of things in the online learning courses in the Jobs to Be Done toolkit that I actually don't talk about in the book, or that I only mentioned very briefly in the book. And then these live workshops that we're doing, we just had one last week, are focused on specific topics, and that's meant to be practical and hands-on. So in a small group of people, we do exercises and we actually practice those things, right? So you can think about the book as broad awareness, the online learning as internalizing and understanding for yourself at a deep level, and the live workshops is practicing how to have those conversations, facilitate sessions, and actually then be able to have the confidence to bring Jobs to Be Done into your organization. Did I miss anything, Elaine?
No, I think that's, you cover everything. We have a ton of stuff in the pipeline too on pretty much every front. We have workshops that we're doing in November and December. We have different resources that we're working on getting out. So in addition to like templates and resource guides that are like shareable PDFs, we're looking at like workbooks that we can kind of pull together all of these different resources that Jim has in his amazing brain. And then same with the online learning, like we're adding new modules to the toolkit. We're talking about like smarter, shorter bundles that could be added onto the toolkit for like specific areas of expertise. So that's all kind of stuff to keep an eye out on our Twitter feed, and via our email newsletter. We'll be sending out announcements in addition to tips and little snackable bits of information.
Are you suggesting that they get access to my brain through the toolkit?
You are a content factory.
Maybe that can be the subtext.
Right.
Access a piece of Jim's brain.
Yeah.
I've been there. I don't recommend coming here because it's a mess, actually.
But that's my role. So
there you go. That's right. Yeah, because you don't want. All right, guys. Yeah, thanks for that. So we do have a next workshop coming up. Do you want to talk about this, Elaine?
Yeah, so our next workshop is going to be the let's see, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving for the U.S.-based folks. So that is Wednesday, November 25th at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we're going to cover jobs to be done for project management. So we're going to really dive deep into elements that are specific for people in project management roles or people that are on project management teams, or even if you're like a designer or a marketing person or somebody who's handling like the technical or operational side and you work with a project manager, this is a great opportunity to bring them into the space and kind of figure out how you can use jobs to be done to kind of get value alignment with your customer needs, figure out how you can create more human-centered business across the board, and kind of just get people pointing the arrow, all moving in that
Right.
same direction.
Right. And for some of you who have taken the course or done the online learning as well too, you'll recognize some of those themes that we've talked about before, like a job map. Because guess what? A job map is also relevant to project management, but we'll also talk about roadmaps and put it in the context of project management as well too. And a lot less about the nuts and bolts of how you build all of these things. And we're going to talk about how you actually apply a couple of the jobs to be done plays in a project management context. Cool.
No,
So that's all. I think that's all we had up front. I see it's already 12 minutes after the hour. So let's get into some of the questions. What do you think?
Yeah, so of the questions that were pre-submitted, the only person that joined today is Jamie. Although I think Alejandro and Anders have really great questions we can touch on.
We can
Maybe
go back
we should
to those.
start with Jamie. Yeah.
Okay. Let's start with Jamie's. Thanks for joining, Jamie. I put these on here, but I actually haven't read them yet. And this first one's quite long. Do we want to just unmute Jamie?
Yeah.
And have him ask. Hey, Jamie.
Hi. Yeah, Jamie here. So I've read your book. I've been using various flavors of jobs to be done casually over the years, but just recently tried to use it more formally with my teammates. And one puzzle is this definition of main job.
Yeah.
So I'll just read this out. We identified a main job of sell luxury fashion online. I work in the B2B side of a luxury fashion marketplace.
Okay.
But it doesn't really have a done state because you're never finished selling luxury fashion.
Right.
Of course, there are lots of smaller jobs underneath it, but those are not the ones we're competing on or hired for. So we compete on the big job that's never really done.
Yeah.
But there are smaller jobs. So I just wondered, would you recommend thinking of that as a main job or targeting the main job as something below? Or should it be an aspiration, or even should we turn maybe to the jobs in progress model for that ongoing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great questions. So sell luxury fashion online might be problematic from the strict rules of jobs to be done. But I think the good news is it feels to me that was a really quick brief for me to kind of consume your space, and I don't have all the details, but just kind of at first blush, it feels to me like you have the right size and you kind of know that there's a there. It sounds to me like it's really just the wording that you might need to tweak, thinking about selling luxury fashion online in a way that fulfills the done criteria and things like that, right? And I would have to think about it myself, right? And if you guys have ever seen me in these webinars or taken courses from me, I get questions like this all the time, and I say, my answer is, I got to think about that, which is to say that jobs to be done is a language, and sometimes the right words and the right formulation of a main job takes a little bit of iteration, and you have to massage it and go to the thesaurus and come back and that kind of thing. That said, again, to reiterate, I feel like it feels like the right thing, right? And your problem that you're struggling with is just the wording of it. It doesn't feel like an aspiration to me, and I think an aspiration would be, well, more aspirational. Sell luxury fashion online is fairly straightforward and functional, so I think you're on the right path there. And I'd have to think about an aspiration as well too. It might even be something about business success, or getting your name out there or something like that, right?
Yeah, we identified some aspirations such as diversifying your business if you're maybe already selling on the high street and
that. Okay. Yep. That could definitely be one. as well too. So then when you're talking about at that model, you are looking at jobs as progress model, right? What I can't say, again, based on this short brief, is what your starting point should be. Should you be starting at jobs as progress or jobs as objective? My rule of thumb is that you can always take any domain and put it into the format of a main job and start with the objective. So that's kind of my my perspective, particularly on the jobs as progress versus jobs as objectives kind of perspectives. That jobs as progress is great. I just don't think that's the best starting point for innovation or improvement, whatever you're trying to do there. That it's better to try to start with the jobs as objectives. So my, again, just here in this quick webinar, it feels like you're on the right place. Continue working on the actual verbs and start with jobs as objective and then go to jobs as progress. So it's not necessarily an either or there either for that last question.
Great.
I hope that helped you. Did that help, Jamie?
Yeah, it did. There's
okay.
a small piece to mop up, which is the fact that it's not a linear process with a conclusion. So we're using more like a mental model diagram to
well, that's cool too, right? Exactly. And this is where a mental model diagram would actually be useful. So part of jobs to be done is actually formulating it in a way that it does have a linear process, right? So there's a little bit of chicken or an egg there, right? So how I formulate that, let me say it the other way around. When you formulate a jobs to be done, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end, right? So if that's your criteria, then how you formulate it needs to fit that criteria. It's almost not the other way around. So in other words, you can't say, oh, well, that's here, sell luxury fashion online. It doesn't have an end, therefore I can't create a job map. It's the other way around. It's how might you rephrase that so that it could be job mappable. I'm not against mental models or jobs as progress as well too. And I've said many, many times before that I see jobs to be done as a complementary approach in our toolkit of UX and innovation and design thinking and agile. It complements those things, and it doesn't mean you throw those away. I think jobs to be done is usually it's a good starting point, but it may not work in your team at this time with the problem that you're trying to solve. And I'm okay with that as well too. Go out and read Indy Young's book on mental model diagrams. Go out and study jobs as progress as well too.
Jim, it looks like Alejandro joined as well. So maybe we can take his question next, and then we will do Kelvin's. We have Kelvin, Josh, and then Stefan. So there are 4 remaining.
Okay, I got a lot here to cover. I've got 12 minutes left. Okay, so Alejandro, I think he actually had 3 questions. I think these are separate ones.
Yes, I think that they were. So maybe pick one.
I insist to where. I'm just going to read that first one. Do we want to unmute Alejandro? I insist to wear the jobs to be done lenses under any sort of framework workshop. I facilitate persona discovery. Am I overdoing it? Are there certain situations you would not use jobs to be done? In Jamie's situation. Yeah, I think it does. It does. When you use jobs to be done, kind of depends on kind of where you are as a team. I talk in the book about the entire business lifecycle, right? From innovation to product delivery to even marketing, right? So I also believe that you can wear this lens, but it's a lens that you can kind of put on and off as well too. So it's not, oh, I put on these glasses and I can't see anything else from any other perspective. Mm-hmm. It's you can put that lens on to use it, and I've used it to kind of shift the conversation, right? So you're doing a mental model diagram or talking about aspirations or progress or something like that. And you go, yeah, okay, but what's the functional job people are trying to get done? And boom, that shifts the conversation in a different direction, right? So you can use jobs to be done even combined with other methods as well too, right? It doesn't have to be all or nothing from my perspective. And that's kind of how I wrote the jobs to be done playbook. It's like you can use it in different ways. I like having the jobs to be done lens on, so I'm not going to say, no, you're not. I'm not going to say you're overdoing it, Alejandro.
So actually that leads really well into, I'm going to combine 2 of the questions from Stefan and Kelvin about how to incorporate jobs to be done with other frameworks. So specifically Scrum, but Agile from Scrum, marketing frameworks. And then Kelvin adds, especially when your team is new to JTBD. So what do you do? You've got Scrum, everybody's committed to it. How do you bring in this new system?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's breaking it down into small things that others can digest, and where I found it problematic is if you go to a Scrum team, you know, you're working on a sprint, and you say, "Hey guys, we're going to throw out all that stuff and replace it with jobs to be done." You're not going to get adoption that way, right? I like to think about pearl growing. Right. So just introduce one thing and say, "Hey guys, I got this cool new thing. It's a modern thing. You want to try it?" Right. And already have it kind of in your plan as well too. And particularly for agile teams, the one thing that I think is really successful is a job story. And the job story, it's actually an analogy, right? So the people who came up with the job story kind of approach and the name job story, they use job story because people who know user stories should be able to relate to it, right? So for me, a kind of a gateway drug for agile teams in particular into jobs to be done is a job story. And what jobs to be done does is it takes that overdoing it lens that Alejandro might have and apply it to your sprints as well too. And the way that I've seen it done is actually not replacing user stories with job stories. Again, I actually don't think that's a good strategy ever. Hey guys, we're not doing user stories. We're only doing job stories. You're not going to get anywhere with that, right? There are people who reject that wholesale, right? Unless there's buy-in already, right? If you're trying to introduce this into a team, they're just going to reject that. But what you can do is complement user stories with job stories. And the way that I've seen job stories done is kind of upfront during sprint planning, upfront during grooming, upfront during actual design work, design parts of the sprint as well too. And that's a good path from your research and job map into then the solution space. Okay, now we got to build this thing, but you don't want to forget about the unmet needs or the pain points and the job map and things like that. And a job story has 3 parts. It's when I'm in this situation at this step, I want, and the I want is really, it's an ability that the person wants, which you can also think about as a requirement on the solution as well too, right? That you need to give, the requirement is give me this ability, right? And you don't mention any technology, so it's an ability. And then what the outcome is, particularly having those outcomes there, if you have 3, half a dozen, sometimes even more per sprint, let's say for every sprint you have a six job stories that you can kind of put up at the beginning of the sprint. That's a great way to jump into the design of the solution and the requirement gathering or whatever you're doing. But then it also becomes a measure of success as well too. You can at every 2 weeks when you do a demo, you can say, yeah, but does it do the job story as well too? Yeah, great. You met the functional requirements of the user stories, but are we getting towards that job story as well too? So it's an input and a measure of success as you go along. So my recommendation is grab onto job stories as a starting point.
Yeah, Wolfram has a couple of good comments as well, kind of leading on to that.
Let's get him on here. Come on, Wolfram.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Shall I? Can I talk now? Oh,
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just writing 2 sentences while you were explaining. I very much agree. So we are going to do so we are going to combine agile and jobs to be done because we are in an agile environment, and jobs to be done is like new, similar topic as for Kelvin. So I was very curious about your answer. And we are starting with jobs to be done. So uncovering the needs, take these phrases, job stories, as you told me in a recent workshop, Jim, as the briefing for the solution, finding like design thinking and all that stuff.
Right.
And when we have a solution, then we go into the agile environment, into the agile Scrum space, and develop the solution we found out in this solution finding between jobs to be done in agile. That's how we are going to do it.
Yep.
And I think we probably have time for one more question.
Okay.
So Josh posed 2, and so maybe pick one or try and cover both of them in one answer.
Are they on the canvas here? Oh, okay, you're going to read it off. Okay.
Yeah, I'll read it off.
Okay.
How do you identify consumption jobs separate from functional jobs? Does that make sense? Josh can ask it too. And then he also wants to know, how can I train people to be better at JTBD interviews so I can get the data I need for analysis?
That's a good question. Very, very separate questions. I'll take the first one first.
And Josh, if you want to unmute and jump in, feel free to.
Yeah. So the functional job, your main job, your starting point in jobs to be done work is, as I pointed out earlier, is to forget about your solution and technology and try to describe the objectives and the outcomes that human beings have in the world, job performers in particular, in a way that is approachable, job map, and describes the outcomes and the objectives that they have without any technology. A consumption job is basically saying, once you as an organization, because as an organization, you're always going to have a product or service on the market, right? Particularly if you're a commercial one, or even if you're not a commercial one, there's still a product or service. So an educational institution, it's education that you provide, or a government agency, right? You always have some service that you're providing, right? So there's always something out there. And what the consumption lens is more like a customer journey map, if you want to think about it that way. It's basically saying people have jobs that to consume that product as well too. And this is particularly relevant for B2B situations, right? I'm actually talking to a big tech company right now where they deal in servers and things like that. And a lot of the people, so the markets that they serve are procurement people at their customers' companies, or IT team people. Right. So a lot of what they want to know, this team that I'm consulting right now, is really the consumption jobs. It's the consumption chain that they want to understand. What I'm going to tell them though is think about, okay, so now they've consumed your solution and then it's there inside of that organization. What are the jobs, the functional jobs and the main jobs that ultimately people want to get done with the solution in and of itself, right? So consumption jobs are very much around how do people then consume your solution. And you can use a lot of the jobs thinking to actually then create, without talking about too much of your own technology. You will be talking about some of the technology though. You can actually create a job map or a consumption map, which in my opinion looks very much like a customer journey map. I hope that made some sense. And then the second one, remind me the second one, Elaine?
How do you get your research teams to uncover data in a way that, let's see, how can I train people to be better at JTBD interviews so I can get the data I need for analysis?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of folks in Jobs to Be Done who have written about Jobs to Be Done don't talk a lot or write about the jobs interview process, and as a result, there are some folks that think that Jobs to Be Done isn't based on research, but it actually is a very rigorous research. I actually look more towards the UX crowd, to UX research for resources on how to interview in general. Right, so Steve Portigal's book about interviewing. One of my favorites is contextual design. Hold on a second, it's right here. I know it's here because I just did a webinar where I held this up to the group as well too. Contextual design. This is really where I learned interviewing in general, from contextual design. And by the way, this book talks about understanding the user's work, and they talk about understanding work. And if you took the word work in this book and replaced it with Jobs to Be Done, it would pretty much be about Jobs to Be Done. So this is a parallel book. And I say parallel because Jobs to Be Done came from the business community, and they kind of said, let's look at objectives and outcomes without looking at technology. And that's, to some degree, that's what this book says as well too. But I don't think they influenced each other or even knew about each other. But if you go to the UX research and UX literature, or design literature like this one here, you're going to learn a lot more about interviewing, and that's why I list this as a reference, in my book, or Steve Portigal's book on interviewing and things like that. The real answer though is practice. There's a kind of an art to having a conversation with people about their work and what they're trying to get done and things like that. So it does take a little bit of practice. So other than borrowing from other literature, practicing, getting out and kind of doing it.
Yeah, you got to do it.
Yeah,
that's not do it.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like learning a language, right? Mm-hmm. Like you wouldn't cram for a Spanish test and expect to be able to speak Spanish. You take a course and then the night before the exam you decide to actually read the books and then go into the course and expect to be able to pass an oral Spanish test. It's kind of like learning a language. It's like you got to do it a little bit over time, and it does take time. Yeah,
build up those comfort levels.
Totally. Yeah. And then once you get that comfort level, you're able to steer. You're able to steer the conversation
Mhm.
It's a very abstract conversation. What are you trying to get done? What are your pain points? You're not talking
Yeah.
about things or buttons. It's not a
Yeah.
usability test, but you're still able to steer that conversation. Yeah, it takes a little bit of craft and skill.
Definitely. Yeah. I've fallen on my face a couple of times in interviews, but
You always do that. But that's the learning, right? Yeah, and it's how you
Yeah.
recover. It's not that you're gonna, because you are gonna fall on your face. It's how you recover from that. That's
totally.
the thing. Yeah, that you always
Totally.
do.
Anyway,
So,
we're at the hour. So
yeah, thanks so much.
thank you so much, everyone. I dropped a link for a quick survey in the chat if anybody has time. It's like just a couple questions and some numbers.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I also just wanted to one quick public service announcement. I do have an offering that I call office hours, and it's basically a little bit of my time over 2 sessions where I would be willing to actually take your brief more than I did for Jamie there. Like we look at a real brief and give real feedback on that as well too. So we can send up in our follow up here. We'll send you a link to the office hours if anybody's interested in that.
Yeah.
All right. Hey.
Cool.
Got to run, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. I hope this was useful to you. Appreciate all the attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.